Hi, I'm Betsy Weber. I'm the Chief Evangelist at TechSmith, and it is now 5 a.m. We've been going for quite some time now. With me, I also have...
I'm Matt Pierce. I lead our video and social media teams at TechSmith.
And joining us all the way from lovely London is Andy Metcalfe. So,
Hello there.
Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
So I run the search team here at OpenTable. We all have various little teams here. My team's about 4 people, and as a team, we run the sort of search APIs that power the iPhone, some of the website, and various bits and pieces at OpenTable. So yeah, very exciting.
Wonderful. And I hear that you're using Camtasia to record some sprint demos?
Yeah, so every couple of weeks, basically we kind of run 2-week sprints. We don't necessarily do our work necessarily on 2-week release cycles, but as a company, it's quite nice to sync up every 2 weeks. And part of that, we do sprint demos. So we're quite a global company, so we've got teams in India, in London, and we've got various people dotted around remote working, and then our largest office is in San Francisco, our big engineering team. And as part of that, obviously, the big challenge is communication between the teams, especially when it comes to what products people are developing. And I think there's 2 main things. There's sort of internal products and internal technologies, and then also what we're going to deliver to our customers out in the wild. So yeah, basically we do our sprint demos, and each team kind of records what they're working on, and then makes it available to the rest of the company through Vimeo or uploading to wherever we need to. So every 2 weeks in the London office, we basically just do a bit like we are now, get on a hangout. Everyone gets on headsets on their computer, they don't sit in conference rooms like this, and then screen shares, demos what they've worked, and that way we can have more of an interactive conversation, and then record it, and then basically at the end of it, we can either edit it with Camtasia, adding hilarious jokes, or editing bits out where people have said a rude word or something like that, and then we basically distribute it, so it works really well.
And what's been the reaction to the videos for your viewers?
The reaction generally is pretty positive. I think having everyone, so basically different offices do it different ways. In one office they do it, and it's kind of like, they do it as a sort of sprint wind down, and they get together and they sort of demo work and they record it. And I think it works great for the people in the room, but it's a little bit tougher for the people outside of the room. So the way we do it, we've tried to sort of make it so that you're almost like the other person on Hangouts watching us, and I think that works really well. Obviously, being a recording, you don't get the interaction and the questions, but hopefully people feel they've got enough, they can follow up with questions. In terms of the actual reactions, generally the reactions are more to the jokes we make, and whether they cross cultural bounds, because it's fair to say jokes that we make over here don't always cross over.
I was going to say, do they get your jokes, or?
A lot of the time, yeah. A lot of the time they don't as well. So we made relentless jokes about a Geordie in our office, someone from Newcastle.
Yes.
And that really didn't work, apparently. That was deathly silence over there, so a bit like a comedian travelling over. So we have to watch what we say sometimes to make sure that it's culturally relevant. But generally, I think that they get well received.
Well, I don't think the TV show Geordie Shore has made it to the U.S. yet, so maybe if you export that.
We tried to make that joke in the demo, and it definitely hasn't. I think that was the feedback we got.
No. And, well, we both speak English, but I'm pretty sure it's not the same language.
Yeah, there's a lot of comedy that does transfer, and especially if you can make the comedy about the work or about people who've done something silly, then you generally that's known across the teams. But yeah, there are certain things that are, and they come in the same the other way as well. We miss out on stuff. So.
Right. And what did you do before you were making videos? What changed? And what prompted the change?
So we tried several things. So at one point we weren't really sharing them. So we were just doing, in each office, just presenting what we'd worked on and then hoping it kind of percolated back however it did. Maybe each product would do a dedicated session and try and get the stakeholders in and do that. And obviously you still need a space, especially when you want to drill into the detail of something you're working on. But often, I think we found that people just didn't realise that stuff was getting done, being finished, and everything else like that. And it wasn't a massive issue, but it was something we thought actually we need to do it. And I think probably anyone who works in a global company knows, is that communication across the globe is the biggest challenge to that, making sure everyone's aware. So it was basically something we moved to. At first, we tried just recording everyone in a room. Actually, in fairness to say, I mean, we've just improved this conference room and the technology in here, but for a while, it just was hard to record. If someone was at the back of the room, you couldn't hear them. I'm sitting near the mic to make sure you can hear me now.
Right.
but getting everyone on Hangouts, everything else just made, with the same headset, everything else, it made life a lot better.
Was anybody resistant to making videos, and how did you overcome that?
Some people are. I think more resistant, as in not as a policy point of view, but more from a sort of self-conscious point of view.
Right.
But I think as we started, because we have to use Hangouts a lot anyway for a couple of remote workers and talking to America, people got used to the idea of Hangouts and the fact that you can see your own face. And if you really don't like it, you can turn your face off. So that's good. People were nervous though about what they were going to say, I think, and sounding stupid. So
Right.
the first we did it in a small group, and I kind of just took people through it because I'm quite an egotist, so it doesn't bother me so much. And I just basically just made jokes and got through it, and then people relaxed and got the format of it, and we evolved it as well. I think that was the thing, and some of the things we did at first weren't really great for recording, and you kind of learn, and then the next time you improve. So
Right.
it gets better.
So I have a question. So, if your group is making a video, how many groups are making videos on that kind of 2 weeks cycle?
So there's the two main groups. So there's the team that are based out of London and the team that are based out of San Francisco. On top of that, we have teams. The team in India do one, but they might do it when it fits them more likely. They don't necessarily integrate on a sort of daily basis with the same code base, whereas the two teams in London and San Francisco do on a more sort of involved basis. We need to sync up a lot more. So for us, there's a lot more crossover and a lot more working out. Then the rest of the teams will do them as they want, and then they can just post them as ad hoc. But actually, it's worth saying that our London video gets played when the San Francisco team meet. Our London video gets played in that meeting so that everyone can see it in that meeting. So that's quite a nice thing. Obviously, someone's going to record first, and that's us, so we don't get the same feedback. We have to watch it the following morning at our desks. But yeah, that's how we do it.
'Cause one of the, and it doesn't sound like it's probably an issue. One of the things that we've talked a lot about throughout this event is, this idea of viewer fatigue, right? That if an organization's making lots of videos, if every 2 weeks, if you had even more than two teams making videos, how much time it takes to go through videos, and if there's resistance to taking time to go through something that's not live, it's not the actual hangout, it's the kind of the canned recording.
So there's obviously two tricks to that. I think one is obviously make it not too long. And that's why, honestly, one of the reasons we use Camtasia rather than just recording Hangouts straight to YouTube, because if it drones on a bit, it's hard to edit it on Hangouts.
Right.
So I think that's something we can do. I think as well, being aware of the fact that they're only in the room for an hour means that we can't really go over 20 minutes. I think yesterday we went to 21, but that's fine. We try and keep it punchy, and I try and move it along as much as possible. And in terms of overexposure, I think you just don't watch the ones you're not interested in. And I think as long as you're sensible about it, it's the same as email. If you get too many emails and if you try and read every single one, even if it's not relevant to you, you are going to sink and swim. It's just the same as information management generally. So yeah, that's kind of how we get around it.
So for anyone that's looking to do what you're doing, do you have any tips for them if they have a team? Especially because we haven't
Right.
talked to anyone that's doing this with a team.
Teams.
Obviously, it sounds like Google Hangout is a key way to get the group together.
Mm-hmm.
But do you have other tips for maybe developers or groups that want to do something like this?
I would say having a compare is quite important. I think just sort of trying to drift around is tough.
Yep.
One thing I try and do throughout is keep in mind the audience that I'm going to be showing it to. So as a compare, I know that we're going to have a lot of product people in a room. So actually one of the things we do as well is we actually split the product and the technical talks up. We do a sort of hilarious comedy moment where we all freeze and say, product people leave the room. And then we let the technical stuff go on. Because, showing how a JSON response to a REST API might well be relevant to product people, but they're hard to grasp it. When they can see the values on a web page, it's much more compelling. So trying to do that. I think then if you've got the compare in the room, the compare can say, right, I know this section's product focused, so I'll keep bringing the presenter back to product-specific questions. And I'll say, that's great, I don't think we need to go into any more detail. And then the person knows where they stand. When we get to the technical one, you can ask questions. So I think, as well, is because I'm also obviously technical myself, is that you can ask sort of questions that you would think, I think someone wants to know this. And you're not going to always get it right, but at least you can hopefully drill in and add some color. I think that's quite critical. And not being afraid to hurry someone along. And I think once people see you do it often enough, they don't get offended. So.
Those are actually great tips. I think not just for groups, but for I like the idea of adding a little bit of color.
Right.
I like the idea of tailoring, even if it's one video, tailoring parts of the video to the groups that
Right,
that
it's
need to hear
relevant
it.
for, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think the point about asking relevant questions is key. I think if you watch some of the more successful podcasts, so I don't know, .NET Rocks or Hansel Minutes or
Yep.
some of the other ones out there, I think they're successful because there's always someone kind of asking the obvious question, you know. And I listened to one about the distributed podcast, which I quite enjoyed. And someone going, so remind everyone, what do you mean by a saga, which is a particular sort of thing. Oh, that's really, okay, that's interesting actually to say, because there is two definitions and, you know, what do you mean about it? And so there's the less of the assumed knowledge that goes on. And even within an organization like OpenTable, you know, we have terms, you know, SRS, you know, and I keep saying to people, you work in the SRS. Now, for everyone, that means
Right.
site resource service in our case. Okay, great. And then people can say, and that returns JavaScript CSS. Okay. So you could kind of get people understanding what that means, whereas rather than having to sort of learn everything, I think that's kind of important too.
Very important. How did you learn about Camtasia?
I think we basically, when we started, we probably had a chat around the office, and it was like, hey, what do anyone recommend? And we tried a couple of things out, and Camtasia, we got it on a trial license, I believe.
Yep.
And then we just bought it after that and just gave it a crack. I think we did try recording Hangouts to YouTube, but as I said, you know, it's hard to edit. We can't edit it really. You've got to make sure everyone gets it right the first time, and you've got to make sure your recording's perfect as well. So yeah, we just tried Camtasia and it just seemed easy enough to get going with, and so we persisted.
Well, Andy, we need to actually wrap up the recorded portion that we're doing here. Thank you so much for sharing your insight and wisdom on especially I think the team stuff is really interesting, and it's fascinating how to learn how other people are using not only Camtasia but how they work. So thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much.
So thanks again to Andy, and we're gonna cut the video here, and we'll be back with more 48 and 24, wrapping up here, getting towards the end.
Wake up.